why so many people struggle to give or receive love, and how to expand your capacity. While I was in college, I became increasingly fascinated with anything having to do with health, medicine, psychology, sociology, history, and semantics, which is the study of language, largely because I wanted to understand people better. And that curiosity has never left me. In fact, it's only grown. So over the years, I've spent countless hours listening to therapists and researchers and healers talk about a range of subjects, including relationships. And recently, I was listening to a podcast where the guest was saying that a huge percentage of men don't know how to give or receive love. And from what I've seen over the past 3.5 decades of working with people, I'd go a step further by saying a huge percentage of people, men and women, have a very limited capacity to give or receive love. I'm Ben Ufana, and because there's so much detail in this article that I'm completing, and I want to make sure I include all the essential elements, I will be reading from the article itself. Most of us were never shown what it looks like to love in a grounded, emotionally present, and consistent way. We weren't taught how to stay open when we feel vulnerable or afraid, or how to stay connected when we're hurting. And beneath all of that, many of us are carrying profoundly deep emotional wounds that limit our capacity to love and to be loved. So this article is about what it actually means to give and receive love, and why so many of us struggle with it, and what it looks like to grow these capacities over time. I'll be sharing understandings I've internalized and the skills I practice daily, and I encourage you to explore and apply them in your own life as well. So many people think love is a feeling that just happens. You fall in love, or you just know, or you don't. But when you look at the decades of research and clinical practice from people like John and Julie Gottman, Sue Johnson, Harville Hendricks, Terry Real, and others who have worked with thousands of couples, a very different picture emerges. Love is not just a feeling, it's a capacity, one that allows us to stay present, open, and connected, and to truly care for someone rather than shutting down, lashing out, clinging, or running away. These capacities are shaped by the homes we grew up in and the way our caregivers related to us, the trauma we lived through, the culture we're embedded in, and what we've done or not done to heal. So let's start where this really begins, childhood. Our earliest relationships literally shape the architecture of our brains and nervous systems. If we grew up with caregivers who were consistently present, responsive, emotionally attuned most of the time, safe to go to when we were distressed, who were able to repair after a conflict, then our nervous system learned something profoundly important, that love is a place I can relax into. But so many of us didn't get that. Instead, we had parents who shut down emotionally, caregivers who were overstimulated or depressed, adults who raged, shamed, or disappeared. Homes filled with tension, fear, instability, and many of us were also neglected and never really seen. When that happened, our nervous system organized around survival, not connection, and that's where many of us develop patterns like anxious attachment style, which means we tend to chase or cling or panic when someone pulls away, or avoidant attachment, which is more about shutting down, detaching, dismissing. That means we're uncomfortable when someone gets too close. We can't handle it. Our disorganized attachment, where there's a lot more confusion, this kind of approach avoidance dynamic, there's a lot of chaos, we tend to be more dissociated or disconnected from our bodies. That's how these dynamics begin to take form. Fast forward to our adult years, and the same nervous system and psyche conditioned for survival is now trying to be in love. Giving love is far more than saying, I love you, or buying flowers. To genuinely give love, we need to be able to show up and stay present, listening without immediately defending or attacking, attune to another person's emotional state, and take responsibility for our behavior, to repair when we've hurt someone, to be moved by our partner's reality, their own feelings, their own sense of vulnerability, and to keep our hearts open even when we're feeling uncomfortable. And yet, for many of us, that can be incredibly challenging because in many respects, there's we're underdeveloped emotionally. A lot of us are emotionally stunted, especially men, not only men, intellectually. We know the language of relationships, communication, vulnerability, being supportive, but emotionally we're still operating at the level of a wounded child. We know how to impress, to pursue, to charm, to seduce, and perform, but we don't know how to love. Love requires slowing down, feeling, being impacted, letting go of performance, and being honest when we're feeling afraid, vulnerable, or insecure. And if we grew up in a home where nobody modeled that, where there was no emotional presence, repair, softness, no genuine vulnerability, then we're likely to have little or no point of reference for what real love actually looks or feels like. We can talk about love, we can crave it, we can chase after it, but we can't embody it because the emotional capacities required to love another person simply never had the chance to develop. For many, real intimacy is frightening because it activates old wounds. When we get close to someone, it stirs the terror of being abandoned, the fear of being criticized or rejected. Shame about our own perceived inadequacy, or the rage tied to all the times we weren't loved the way we needed to be. If we never learned how to work with those emotions, our system will do whatever it can to protect us. We'll go numb, pull away, turn to porn, work, substances, or distractions. We'll generate drama by starting a fight, or we'll keep our partner or potential love interest at arm's length. One of the biggest traps I see people falling into is that of confusing intensity with intimacy. Those of us who grew up in chaotic or emotionally neglectful homes tend to associate drama, volatility, the chase, instability, and emotional roller coasters with love or chemistry. Neurochemically, the push-pull of an inconsistent partner, especially in trauma-bonded relationships, creates massive spikes in dopamine, cortisol, and adrenaline. It feels alive. By contrast, a steady, emotionally available partner can feel boring, flat, suspicious, or even threatening. When we equate love with intensity, we will unconsciously seek out or create chaos, and we won't know how to show up with the kind of steady, grounded presence real love actually needs to grow. Matters are often further compounded by our lack of emotional and interpersonal skills. Successful relationships aren't built on grand gestures, they're built on the small, everyday skills of turning towards bids for connection, managing conflict without contempt or stonewalling, repairing after ruptures, expressing appreciation, and maintaining a basic sense of goodwill. Yet most of us were never taught how to regulate our nervous system when we feel triggered, how to listen without interrupting, how to express anger without cruelty, and how to own our part in a conflict. For the most part, these are not intuitive skills. They have to be learned and practiced. Without them, our love is more likely to show up as withdrawal, caretaking, jealousy, possessiveness, or anxious chasing, but not as genuine, steady, attuned love. Let's talk now about why so many of us can't receive love. For many of us, receiving love is even harder than giving it. To receive love, we have to let ourselves be seen, allow someone to care for us, to feel worthy of their attention and affection, soften our body enough to let that care in, and whenever it arises, work through the impulse to push it away, shut down, or devalue the person offering it. The deeply wounded parts of ourselves may say, I don't deserve this. If our early experience taught us that we were too much, not enough, a burden, invisible, or only valuable when we performed, then when someone genuinely values us, our mind and nervous system doesn't quite know what to do with it. Love bumps up against all these old internal narratives that tell us, if they really knew me, they would leave. This can't possibly last. Oh, they must want something. Or I'm going to fuck this up. Instead of relaxing into being loved, we test them, push them away, provoke fights, we start scanning for flaws, we sabotage a connection, or we run towards someone less available, someone who feels more familiar. Love is often perceived as a threat, and for those of us with the history of betrayal, abuse, or if we grew up with caregivers who were horribly inconsistent or manipulative, love is not associated with safety, it's associated with being controlled, hurt, abandoned, or used. So when someone says, I love you, our body doesn't hear safety, it perceives an incoming threat. The closer someone gets, the more activated our nervous system becomes, and receiving love starts to feel like a threat to our survival. And there's the tendency among many of us to become overwhelmed and to shut down. When we're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, those of us with a more anxious attachment style are more likely to go into protest mode, which could be reaching out, chasing, continually seeking reassurance. Those with the more avoidant attachment style are more likely to withdraw or shut down. If our system has never learned how to stay regulated while being seen and cared for, we vacillate between these extremes, either clinging and demanding reassurance or shutting down and detaching completely. And neither state completely allows love to land. It's also compounded by the fact that so many of us are living in our heads, not in our bodies, especially for those who have been through trauma, who grew up in whatever extreme dysfunctional environment, or if that's our present day reality, we're more likely to escape into thinking. We analyze, interpret, and obsess, but we can't actually feel what's happening in our chest, abdomen, or throat. If we're disconnected from our bodies, the best we can do in our attempt to understand love is to intellectualize it. And when love is only conceptualized, we can't fully take it in. And the emotional and relational capacities required to fully love another person have not yet fully developed. Let's talk now about what it really means to give love. And we're going to break this down into practical terms, starting with presence. Rather than being checked out or lost in our head, we actually show up. We're there physically and emotionally. We look at the person we're with, we listen, and we feel them. Attunement. We pay attention to their emotional state. We notice any subtle shifts taking place within them, and we check in. How are you feeling? And we care enough to ask and listen to the answer. Emotional responsibility, which means not dumping our unprocessed pain onto others and then calling it being honest. We recognize our triggers, our history, and our wounds, and we actually work with them instead of making them someone else's burden. Reliability. We do what we say we'll do. We show up when we say we will. We repair when we break trust. And over time, our presence becomes something the other person can lean into. Compassion. We allow ourselves to be moved by what someone is feeling and the challenges they're facing. When discernment shows that intervention can genuinely help, we step in. Rather than reacting to discomfort or overriding another person's agency, we respond from clarity, offering support in a grounded, appropriate way. Boundaries and honesty. We say no when we need to. We don't pretend to feel things we don't. We assert our needs with clarity while taking those of others into consideration. And instead of disappearing, we communicate openly and directly. These are some of the foundational elements essential for giving love. It's not performative, it's steady and emotionally mature. Receiving love, on the other hand, is its own practice. To receive love in a healthy way means allowing ourselves to be seen. Rather than hiding the parts of us that we feel are unlovable or inconvenient, we allow others to see who we really are, not the curated version of ourselves. We allow ourselves to be known. Letting love in, rather than immediately pushing away expressions of love or kindness shown to us by others, minimizing or dismissing them, we allow people to do kind things for us. We let them support us, encourage us, show up for us, nurture us, and even love us. Softening our body. We notice when we're tensing up, whether it's our jaw, our chest, abdomen, or throat, and we practice softening those places when someone is being loving towards us. We allow our body to receive what our mind may not yet trust. Facing our shame. We acknowledge the parts of us that feel defective, or too much, or not enough. We begin to reveal those places to people who have earned our trust, not to be fixed, but to be met. Staying instead of running. When we feel the urge to run, create distance, start a fight, or shut down, we stay a little longer and we gradually extend the time that we're able to remain present. And then we breathe while allowing the waves of fear and other uncomfortable feelings and bodily sensations and the impulses that arise to move through us without taking over. With continued practice, we become more and more at ease with ourselves and what's happening in the moment, and with the people we're learning to stay connected to. You see, receiving love means being vulnerable, and for many of us, it's much harder, at least initially, than giving it. So let's talk now about how we begin to grow our capacity to love. Starting out, shaming ourselves for not knowing how to love serves no useful purpose. We're judging ourselves for not having skills and capacities we most likely haven't had the opportunity to learn thus far. Instead, begin by saying, I wasn't giving the essential tools, the foundation that I needed prior, but now I can begin to learn. This shift alone is powerful because we're giving ourselves permission to be human. A good place to start is learning about how our attachment system works. Understanding our attachment system, whether anxious, avoidant, disorganized, or more secure, gives us a map of our own patterns, not just our own attachment system, but that of our partners or any person that we want to form any kind of healthy attachment to. Books like Attached by Levine and Heller, Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson, and John and Julie Gottman's work on bids, repair, and emotional attunement can give us the language and insight into what happens inside of us when we get close to someone, when we feel threatened, or when we feel unseen. And that gives us considerable leverage. Rather than becoming overwhelmed by our own emotions or our partner's reactions, we have a foundation that allows us to navigate the intensity that arises between two people, to stay present long enough to sense what's happening inside of us and respond with greater clarity and intention. Instead of falling back into old patterns, we begin to relate in ways that actually move the connection forward. Let's talk now about the importance of connecting with our bodies. Most of us were never truly connected to our bodies to begin with. We've lived in our heads for much of our lives, dissociated, armored, bracing against pain, and emotionally shut down. For many of us, connecting with the body isn't returning to something we've lost. It's learning, often for the first time, how to show up with greater presence and awareness. We cannot give or receive love when we're disconnected from our bodies, and that's because love doesn't live in our thoughts. It lives in our emotional warmth, our ability to feel, to soften, and be vulnerable. Practices such as the form of meditation I teach, which is about working directly with our feelings and bodily sensations, along with therapeutic interventions like deep tissue bodywork. The individual sessions I facilitate and the Vision Quest all help dissolve the armor and bring more of us into our bodies. As we become more embodied, our capacity to love and be loved expands. Not everyone is familiar with the concept of digestion when it comes to their lived experiences and emotions, yet this is so critical to our ability to heal and to form healthy bonds or attachments. And like most people, you're not just dealing with present-day hurt. You're carrying a backlog of undigested emotions, old heartbreaks, betrayals, losses, childhood pain, and attachment wounds. And as long as that backlog sits in your body, congealed into stagnation and armor, it limits your capacity to give and receive love. Digestion of your lived experiences and emotions means allowing yourself to feel the grief, sadness, anger, fear, and shame, along with the sensations that arise in your body. Breathing softly and deeply as you stay present with what you're feeling. In doing so, you're gradually metabolizing the emotional residue you've been holding and the impressions of your lived experiences. It's important to understand that this isn't something that just happens in a single session. It's an ongoing process, a steady unwinding and gradual attuning to yourself over time. As you continue to digest more of what you've been carrying, you're able to show up more fully present, which naturally expands your capacity for intimacy. Let's explore now how we could be practicing love in small and consistent ways. The Gottman's research shows that relationships thrive on small, consistent acts of love, not the occasional grand gesture. If we're partnered with someone, this is where we begin. And if not, these are the capacities we can begin to practice every day with the people already in our lives. And here are a few examples of how we can be practicing love in daily life. Start by turning towards people instead of pulling away. When someone reaches for us, we can stay engaged rather than distancing, or distracting ourselves or shutting down. Listening without immediately making it about us. We let the other person fully express what they're feeling without interrupting, defending, or shifting the focus to our own experience. Being honest when we're feeling hurt or vulnerable instead of punishing or withdrawing. Rather than using silence, sarcasm, or anger to protect ourselves, we do our best to articulate clearly what we're actually thinking and feeling. Allowing someone to help us, even to care for us, without shrinking or resisting. We soften enough to receive support when it's offered, rather than reflexively pushing it away, minimizing our needs, or insisting that we don't need anything. Making things right when we've been reactive or unkind. We take responsibility, acknowledge the impact of our words and actions, and repair any damage done, without excuses, defensiveness, or self-flagellation. These actions may seem small, but they build the internal capacities that make healthy relating possible. Over time, they strengthen our capacity to love, to stay connected, and to remain present with the people who matter. We all need to deepen our understanding of any deficits we may possess and the capacities that we need to be developing. When we've grown up in highly dysfunctional families, or even worse, when we've suffered abuse, whether verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, or some combination of these, we become fixated in the distorted patterns through which we relate to others. It's a kind of shaping or forced molding of our relational capacity. It reminds me of the way women's feet were once bound in Japan. The disfigurement, the pain, the lifelong disability, our emotional and relational lives can become just as constricted. Making matters worse in our current digital age is how we're becoming increasingly disconnected from our emotions, our bodies, and the core of our being. And this disconnection is only intensifying as we spend ever more time on our devices and scrolling through our social feeds. Instead of being rooted in our own inner experience, our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations, our point of reference is now external. Our attention is continually pulled outwards by the digital content being fed to us, drawing us away from ourselves. As a result, we have far less bandwidth available to do the deep processing of our lived experiences and emotional responses. And when we lose touch with what's happening inside us, we become incapable of effecting the healing we need. We remain frozen in our woundedness. Because we're more isolated now, relying on text instead of real conversation, working remotely and spending far less time directly engaged with one another, many of the capacities we need for healthy relationships never fully develop, or they begin to atrophy. Our ability to read social cues, attune to another person's emotional state, sense subtle shifts in tone and facial expression, and stay present in moments of discomfort or vulnerability weakens over time. Parts of the brain that govern empathy, emotional regulation, and relational intelligence simply don't get the stimulation they need, and like any unused capacity, they begin to wither. That's why it takes a more conscientious effort on our part to engage with people, to practice these skills, and to rebuild what has gone dormant. Many of us are also operating with profound deficits. We need intervention not only to heal what we cannot heal on our own, but to help us develop capacities that have yet to fully emerge. The attachment wounds we've carried since childhood, the more recent relational traumas we've internalized, the deeper layers of grief, sadness, hurt, or anger held in the body as stagnation or armor. These cannot be fully healed through willpower or insight alone. We will invariably form attachments to people who put us in touch with our deepest vulnerabilities. When that happens, we need to acknowledge what's arising in response, center our awareness in the depths of that experience, and breathe softly and deeply as we follow the feelings and bodily sensations through their progression. When my mentor, Horace Dokai, one of the last surviving traditional doctors, medicine men of the Kiowa tribe, passed portions of his healing gifts to me, he had me go on the vision quest to earn the right to work with them. Over the years, as I continued to go on the vision quest, there were many times when I could feel this extraordinarily powerful presence descending into my body. When that happened, I would at times feel myself reliving the traumas of my childhood and adolescence, along with the more recent heartbreaks and the challenges I was facing at the time. Feeling the full range of sensory impressions, bodily sensations, and the emotions tied to those experiences. As all of this moves through me, I can feel myself digesting the past, the traumas, the grief and confusion, the disappointments, the things I didn't have the capacity to process when they first happened. I come out the other side feeling much lighter, with the new foundation taking shape inside me. More present in my interactions, more empathetic, more understanding, and a better friend and companion. Because I've trained with a traditional native doctor and have gone through so many vision quests and have done the hard internal work to heal my own wounding, I'm able to work as a conduit, as indigenous healers have done for thousands of years. Those who work with me over time experience many of the same kinds of changes that have unfolded in me. They're able to let go of unhealthy attachments to individuals or relationships that don't serve them. I watch as these same individuals develop a greater warmth, become more caring, and become more fully embodied. They grow more receptive to love and more capable of being a good partner. I see how that enables them to show up with greater clarity and empathy and to communicate more honestly. They're not just feeling better, they're becoming someone who could truly form loving, meaningful, deeply fulfilling, intimate relationships. And I want to thank all those of you who have joined me, who have stayed to listen to what I've had to share in this video. If you haven't done so already, be sure to, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to look below and click like and subscribe. Also, if you're resonating with what you're hearing and you feel ready to take the next step, I offer individual sessions by phone and in person. Message or call me at 332-333-5155 or visit benufana.com, teachmetomeditate.com, or healmyheartache.com to learn more.